Hey, welcome to our ongoing series of podcasts of interviews with HVAC and plumbing industry leaders and contractors like yourselves. For those that you have not listened to these podcasts before, my name is Mike Layton, and I am the founder of an HVAC and plumbing consulting company called Stochastic Marketing. And we are tracking about $8 billion of our customers' residential HVAC and plumbing sales. But today I am really excited to be sharing a conversation with really one of the legends of the HVAC business. His name, of course, is Ron Smith. And in addition to being a former contractor, a franchisor, a consolidator, Ron is a very active HVAC consultant and the author of probably the most widely read book in the industry, which was HVAC Spells Wealth, along with a new update, More and New HVAC Spells Wealth. Ron, it's great to talk to you again, and you're awfully hard to catch up with for someone who is supposedly thinking about retiring. So it's what have you been doing lately since the last time we caught up in Las Vegas?
Oh, well, I've been traveling as usual, and one of the reasons I'm sometimes difficult to find is because, frankly, I'm a moving target. I'm all over the place, and in our country and out of the country, and so I always urge everybody to use my cell phone because it's going to be a lot easier to reach me than it is calling the office. But I always you can bank on this. I always return if I'm not there when I get a call. I always return the calls. I'm just very disciplined on that. I never have been accused of not returning phone calls. So, and I would welcome all the calls. And while I'm talking about myself, I just want to say I'm very pleased and consider it a great opportunity to be on this call, not only with you, Mike, of course, but also with the people we have that are listening. It's just a great industry, and it's been very good to me. And I just like to help people do better themselves as well, and they can say the same thing I can, how this industry has rewarded them.
Well, you've always been so generous with your time at industry events. You know, where really all the established players seem to know you. And I just wanted to introduce you to the thousands of contractors or their employees who for whatever reason don't make the time to, attend the many industry events and kind of share some of your insights into the HVAC industry. Can you just kind of give us some of the background? I mean, you really were, and I don't want to make you sound older than you are, I'm really meaning more experienced. You were really on the ground floor in Florida when the HVAC business was really just kind of getting in its current form, weren't you?
Yeah, that's exactly true. I was just about as far down in Florida as you could get, southwest Florida, Fort Myers and Naples, that area. They're the last two communities on the west coast of Florida, and we were, maybe 90 to 95 miles from Havana, Cuba, which will give you a good idea where we were. So when I moved down there in my mid-20s, I went to work for a heating and air conditioning company. I'd like to say that when I decided I should make a career choice, in other words, what kind of profession or industry do I really want to be in, that I studied and went to the library and did everything else, but I didn't. I didn't have a job in Fort Myers, and I found a job with a heating and air conditioning contractor as a helper, crawling around in attics. And here I am 60-some years later, or about 57, 58 years later, still in that same industry, but not crawling through near as many attics. So you're right. Air conditioning was brand new down there. Very few people had it. And I mean, you literally started with $500 in your pocket and started a business from that whopping investment, didn't you? Yeah, if anybody would, take a few minutes of their time and read the biography or read about it, and it's in the books a couple of my books anyway, it talks about how I started. I didn't have anything but a lot of guts, Mike. I quit a job, went to the First National Bank in Fort Myers. They loaned me $500. I'm not sure why. And I started the company. I had no coworkers and had no customers. And I just want to add that someday I'm going to pay that $500 back.
Well, hopefully the bank didn't wash away in the latest hurricane.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron, one of the quotes from one of your books that sticks with me is that one where you say that HVAC is a complex business, and a key to success is making a complex business seem less complicated. So how do HVAC contractors do that?
Okay. It can be a very complicated business, and there's a difference between complex and complicated. Complicated to me means you're all over the place and not sure which one you ought to be focusing on. But we can't ignore the fact that it is a complex business. What I mean by that, a lot has to come together. We have to learn how to staff, and of course that's essentially recruiting and hiring. And then retention, of course, is very, very critical in staffing. And we got to worry about receivables. We got to worry about warranties. We've got to find enough money to keep the business in operation. We have inventories to manage. We deal with CPAs. We deal with attorneys. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that you have to do to manage and operate an HVAC company, more so than other trades. It's just frankly just more complex. So how do we break that down and make it a little bit easier? Well, start off with this. I'm a huge fan of processes. Processes means for everything we do in our business, we have determined how we want to have it accomplished. How's it going to be done? Or in many companies, everybody just kind of does things the way they want to, and so there's no consistency. If they get a technician this week from a company, and 3 months later have a need for a technician again, and a different one comes, the customer is probably going to be treated totally different. So processes are the way we want things done. We train people on those processes, and we insist that's the way we're all going to do it the same way. And it starts right off, Mike, with how do you answer phones? Who's going to pick the phone up first? Who's going to pick it up next? Who's going to pick it up third if the other two are tied up? And what are they going to say? And how are they going to? If a call has to be transferred, how are you going to go about doing that? So that sounds like a very simple and maybe not necessary process, but it's very important because, of course, that's the first impression you're going to make with some people. In fact, it could be the last impression. So,
and a lot of that, hey Ron, a lot of that sounds pretty obvious to some guys today.
Yeah.
But of course, when you started, there weren't really any organizations or any place to go just to learn how to set up a business like that, right? You could go learn how to fix it, but no business training.
What I did do is, though, I started visiting other companies, and that's always a big help. So along with processes, I try to keep companies focused on what I call blocking and tackling. In other words, do the things that are not complicated, not difficult, and get away from throwing 70-yard passes. And those are the things that, if it works, it's great. But if you can grind out 4 or 5 yards at a time with your blocking and tackling, you're going to get the same results by the end of the game. Whenever you throw a forward pass, Mike, there's 3 things that can happen, and 2 of them are not good. So, I mean, we're going to throw a few long forward passes, but not very many. So that the blocking and tackling, the processes. Another one would be sure to read and mark up with highlight pens, with sticky notes or whatever. My first book, HVAC Spells Wealth. That book is jammed with processes, as is the second one, which is more new, HVAC Spells Wealth. But read read the first one first. HVAC spells wealth. You'll see all kind of processes and things that you could be doing. And you don't have to do them all at one time. You just, chalk a few off. Training other people. So you don't have to do everything yourself. Train them in the way that you like for them to do it. And then I'm a big fan of Service Roundtable. There is so much information on Service Roundtable. It's very, very affordable. And should you decide, wait a minute, this is not for me, I don't want to be in Service Roundtable, and that very rarely happens, incidentally, you don't have to go through the ringer. You just say, I'm not going to continue. Because they don't ask you to sign a contract. It's a whopping $50 a month, and there's so much value there. It's incredible. The company's about 15 years old, and all kind of information has been archived. And I know that company really well because I was one of the original investors. I'm a shareholder, and I'm on the board of directors. And so I can say with a lot of authority that you should be a member of Service Roundtable. So there's just some things you can do to make your business less complicated.
Well, I know the Service Roundtable groups are always great events. You run into people you've developed, years-long relationships with.
Yep.
But one of the things you touched on, I think, is probably don't mean to be a philosophical in your books, but a quote that I find pretty profound is that when you say business is fun, it's like Monopoly, but with real money. What does a contractor need to do to make his business more fun? Is it just profits, or is it kind of taking care of the 3 C's that you talk about in your most recent book?
Well, I think that a lot of it is all about motivation. And motivation, incidentally, means to inspire others. If you can motivate people, you're inspiring other people. And I have some information. Let's see, where is that? And I think it's in the very first book I just mentioned, HVAC Spelled Wealth. I'm going to try and find that. Here it is. Motivating, inspiring people to take action, hopefully positive action. And that comes naturally to some leaders, but with others it doesn't. They're not blessed with that characteristic. But there are companies out there, and I've visited some, that are so horrible to work at that the customers basically, it's so difficult to work in that company. No fun to work there that the coworkers have to throw up in the parking lot before they go in the office. And that's a pretty strong statement, but I've seen them like that. So, but there are people who are blessed with motivation, characteristics, and skills. And if you're not, you can be, or if you want to get a general manager, make sure the general manager is. So things that you could do, I think, to ensure that these things are happening and people are having fun while they're working is you yourself need to have presence in the company, whether you're the boss of the whole company or in a leadership position. I don't call people managers, I call them leaders, because I don't think you can manage people, but I think you can lead people. So successful motivators show that they care and they're willing to listen to their people. And if any of you are like to read, there's never been a better business book written that talks about this than Bob Peters and Bob Waterman's book that came out years ago called In Search of Excellence. And they talk about all that, and they talk about a practice that they use. It's called Management by Walking Around, MBWA. So that's something you might want to pick up. So what do leaders do to ensure rewards? We all know, or probably know, that people will do what you want them to do if you share in the rewards. And that's a statement that I've used for several years. And when I say they'll do what you'd like for them to do if you ensure rewards, a lot of people immediately think I'm talking about money. But there are rewards other than money. And these are not difficult to do. It's a matter of discipline and remembering to do them. And here you are. First is recognition. Everybody likes to be told they're doing well. And we should tell them that if they are. And incidentally, it's a good thing to do that in front of other coworkers. So recognition. Another one is self-esteem, helping them to feel better about themselves and helping them build their esteem. One way of doing that is to give them all business cards. So all my people in my companies always had business cards, and there was no titles on any of the cards. Spiffs. A spiff, of course, is a form of a commission, and that might mean you've been hired to go out and fix furnaces and air conditioners, but if you can fix people as well by getting them to invest in a service agreement or agreeing to a presentation on a replacement system or investing in a humidifier or a high-efficiency filter or whatever, you're going to be rewarded for that in addition to your regular pay. And then career growth. What about career growth? That means we've got a company that you don't have to quit our company to grow in this industry. We will figure out how to help you move up into a more rewarding position within our own company. So that's 4 of them, and the 5th one is one we probably don't think about, and that's working for a good company. Working for a good company is a form of a reward. So the rewards are recognition, self-esteem, spiffs, career growth, and working for a good company.
Well, you were on, I think you've covered the thing that so many of my customers talk about. We're working with a couple hundred contractors in any given week, and they often mention, over and over and over, they have a hard time finding employees or coworkers. And you've kind of touched on kind of the decades of experience you've had at motivating employees with whether it's simple stuff like giving them business cards and nice uniform and recognizing success. But are the homeowners of today different than when you first started, getting into homes and sometimes installing HVAC equipment for the first time the homeowner had it? What's different between the homeowners of 20, 30, 40 years ago and the ones that contractors have to take care of in today's market? Is there anything markedly different that you see?
Yeah, it's the customer's knowledge. Customers are, they're online all the time, searching the internet, and sometimes you think that they know more than we do. They have already made some decisions. They got us out there talking to them, hoping we'll support the decision they already made, or trying to make. And back in when I first got in the industry, and for several years after that, HVAC was so mysterious to them. They didn't understand. All they knew was, other people have to put it in, other people have to repair it because I don't know how, and I wouldn't even try. I know they got to be able to solder or weld refrigerant lines, copper refrigerant lines. They've got to be able to, they got to be multi-talented. They got to know something about low voltage wiring, something about high voltage wiring. There's all kinds of things they have to do. They have to understand air distribution, put systems in that not only cool but move the air where it ought to be, and the right amount of it. And all that stuff was very mysterious. It's still rather mysterious to a lot of people, but they know a lot more about it now than they did before. And once again, a lot of what they're learning is from experience, because they probably won't be getting their first air conditioner anymore. Some will, but most people are going to be replacing a system for maybe 3-4 times by now. But certainly a lot of them for the first time will be getting their first replacement. So they're just more knowledgeable. That's the big difference.
Well, and some guys complain about how the internet, they'll be out in the house spec'ing a repair. They will diagnose the problem and they describe what they're going to do, and the homeowner comes down to the basement or out in the garage and says, "Why are you charging so much? I went online and this part is only $5." Like, well, knowing where to get it, and I have it in the truck, and I can actually install it, or you just can buy it. Yeah. But it's not just that. It's not just on homeowners educating themselves. The internet continues to be a growing influence on contractors' interaction with homeowners, whether that's the marketing side or online reviews or consumers checking out your work. But often contractors that usually reach out to someone who is say, a little younger than you on feedback on the latest internet marketing techniques. But, you really addressed this years ago when you talk about managing change. Should contractors just learn from your book on managing the inevitable changes in the business? The internet's just another change, right?
It is, and it seems very mysterious, like I described air conditioning a while ago, years ago. But it's really not. It's just another form of communicating, and it's not that tough. Some people would like the way you think it is, and for some people it probably is. But you mentioned managing change. What I have found, and that's a very interesting topic, Mike, because I found, and I'm sure this is right, that most people inherently resist change.
Sure, right.
In other words, everything's okay the way it is. Why do we have to change it? There's all kind of reasons. And so I did not come up with this, but I discovered it, and I use it, and I've used it successfully for many years and trained a lot of other people. If you have a pen, for the people that are listening, please write this down. COC, just plain COC, those letters, equals M times P times D. So it's a formula. COC equals M times P times D. COC is cost of change. And the cost of change is not just some piece of equipment or apparatus or testing device or something that you have to purchase. It means how are my people going to feel about this once they understand what the change is, and will they stay with me long enough for me to tell them what the change is going to be all about? And is it going to be good for them, or is it going to make their life more difficult? So here's what happens. We as leaders in our companies, we may go to a seminar, or we may go to a convention or something, and there's a trade show there, and we see something, pardon me, that we fall in love with, and we'd like to put that in our company. And I keep thinking back to the day, Mike, when everybody, all contractors, were performing demand service on a time and material basis. And then along comes flat rate, and now most companies are using some system, some form of flat rate. Well, that was a change. So that's an example. So cost of change, COC, equals M times P times D. M stands for model. P stands for process. D stands for dissatisfaction. All right. So let's start with this. We go to a convention or a trade show, and we see something we're excited about, and we decide we want to put that in our company. That would be our model. That's what we want. This thing, this process we're going to go through, we want it to result in that model. All right, that's a big step forward for us, because in the past what we've done, and one of the reasons that people resisted change is we told them it was going to change something, but we never told them what it was supposed to look like when we got done. We knew, but we didn't tell anybody else. So now, if we look at what it's going to be as a model, we can go public with that. Hey, folks, we're going to make a change. When we're all done, this is what it's going to be, and I think you're going to like it. It's going to make your job even easier, not more difficult. All right, then we got to have a process. What that means, how are we going to get from where we are now to where we're going to go? I call that moving from the present state of affairs to a future state of affairs. That's what we're doing in this formula. So the process is, how do we get from where we are to where we're going to go? And the dissatisfaction is interesting, because we think, and if we do a really good job of describing the model, we do a good job of describing how we'll get that model in place and move from the present state to the future state, then we hopefully are creating with our coworkers a degree of dissatisfaction in the way we're doing it now. to the point where they might say, what took us so long to come up with this, boss? Why weren't we doing this a long time ago? That would be a great statement to get from your people. That means they're bought in on what you want to do. So that's the formula you use. In my own businesses, every time I used that, it worked. The problem I had, sometimes I forgot to use it. And I'm the guy that almost invented it, at least for our industry, and why I sometimes forgot it, I have no idea. But I do. So I'm trying now to discipline myself and not allow that to happen. That formula will work if you'll use it.
You talk a little bit. Yeah, you talk a little bit about vision and business strategy when you're trying to talk about how to motivate people. I talked with Brandon Jacob, who you know.
Yeah.
At length about contractor valuations and why contractors ought to know the value of their company, even if they aren't buying or selling. And you talk about visioning and business strategy in your books, which is almost another side of the same coin. How does visioning and business strategy in your books, how does that fit into how sort of an HVAC spells wealth kind of way of looking at the world?
Okay. I'm going to explain visioning quickly as I can. I used to encourage everybody to put together a business plan and push it out 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or whatever you want to do. But what do you want your company to look like, let's say, 5 years from now? That would be a business plan, and there's just a lot of ingredients to a business plan. Mm-hmm. But after studying all that, and I went back to a university and took a few hours on visioning. Visioning is a different situation. A vision would be like, if I could make anything happen that would cause my company to be a better company, what would I want to do? And I can't allow myself to worry about how we're going to do it. Visioning means you put this together regardless of how difficult it might be and how you're going to accomplish it. That comes along a little bit later. And that's the strategy. The vision is, what do we want to look like? And then the strategy is, how are we going to get from where we are to where we're going? So that's what visioning and strategy is all about. And it would result probably in a business plan when you're all done. But some people can vision, some people can't. They're just not capable of doing a vision, because every time they try to do a vision, they get caught up with, well, how am I going to make that happen? And it's not time to worry about that yet. So that's what I'm talking about, and I hope that made it clear. I'm not sure I did.
Well, a little bit. I think you don't give yourself enough credit. You spend so much time trying to help people just by helping them run their business, how to organize it, how to motivate their employees. And, you talk a little bit about these, tuck-in acquisition type things, right? Yeah. In your book. And you talk about it for maybe half a page. And, of course, you did a lot of that in your background as a franchisor, as a kind of a roll-up guy, if you will, which is not bad for a guy who started with $500 to figure out how to start doing that. But is that part of when you say HVAC spells wealth? Is that, the little tuck-in companies that you acquire as you grow to certain sizes? How does that all fit in to, that wealth creation that so many of your readers have kind of enjoyed over the years?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, I'm looking at ways to grow your company. Most people do want to grow their company. There's different ways of doing it. One would be just try to do more of what you're doing. Another, and that's called organic growth. Another would be expanding your market area. But then if you expand the market area geographically, there's a downside to that, because it results in a lot of what we call windshield time.
Right.
So we've got trucks driving around all over the city and out of the city, and we just hope we don't arrange for this would be poor dispatching, arrange for a head-on collision with two of our own vehicles, because we're all over the place. So that's not very efficient, although I've done it, and so have a lot of other people. So a lot of what I'm writing about, and a lot of things I'm telling people about, are things that I did that didn't work. And so if I wrote a book about all the things that did work, and that's HVAC spells well, if I wrote a book about the things I did that didn't work, it would have been a bigger book.
I think we ought to take a break here because I think we're about out of time. I try and do these about 30 minutes. I'd love to get back again and kind of talk about what you mentioned before we got on the call. Just a real short, sweet conversation about selecting, retaining, and motivating employees, because that's such a big topic. But in the meantime, contractors who can't wait for more information or the subsequent podcast can order one of your 3 books. Earlier today I said 2, but really it's 3. You can either go at stochasticmkt.com, or of course you can reach Ron, I should say Mr. Ron Smith, at ronsmithhvac.com.
That's right.
Or of course,
if you want to see what else on there for sale.
Yeah, just click on the link that's furnished with this podcast to talk with Ron or myself, or get some of his books. And I'd also like to encourage any of our listeners who may want to see Ron in person in February this year or next year. You can check us out at mirrorconference.com. And every year that's sort of a unique 2-day conference where we dig into a couple hundred contractors' numbers. And Ron should be there this year. He's kind of working into his schedule. But Ron, why don't we just kind of wrap this one up and then maybe schedule another one in a couple weeks when you get back from one of your world tours you're always on, and dig into what you wanted to talk to people about in terms of selecting, retaining, and motivating employees, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I mean, recruiting and hiring would be a good topic. It would be, we wouldn't be as long as we've been here today already, and we'd just be focusing on those things.